All right, everybody, welcome back. We are ready for another deep dive. And this one is going to be a little bit nostalgic and probably a little bloody.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking Final Destination.
Oh,
It is
yeah.
back. The franchise is back from the dead after 14 years with Final Destination Bloodlines.
Wow. It's interesting to see this franchise kind of come back to life, especially now. I mean, the horror landscape has changed a lot since the last one came out.
Right, yeah. So if you haven't seen the Final Destination movies, the basic premise is you cheat death. Somehow you escape some crazy accident, and death does not like to be cheated.
Yeah.
So it comes back for you.
Yeah.
And the ways that it gets you are always crazy elaborate, Rube Goldberg-esque death traps involving very ordinary objects.
It's fascinating how it taps into like primal fears, right? Like this idea that fate is inescapable. You avoid one danger, there's always another lurking around the corner.
Totally. And today we have some entertainment news articles that are giving us a little sneak peek at what's in store with Bloodlines. And let me tell you, it is wild. Just a heads up, we are going to be talking about some pretty gruesome stuff, including one death that involves a nose ring.
Oh, yeah. The infamous nose ring death. It's definitely generated a lot of buzz online.
So the trailer dropped, and the first thing that hit me was this one seems to be going back to the roots of the franchise. Instead of the huge set pieces of the later films, we're back to more smaller scale, personal death traps.
Interesting. It is interesting to see that kind of a shift back to basics. I mean, there's something about that rawness, the intimacy of the earlier films that really resonated with audiences. Almost feels like maybe it's a reaction to some of the over-the-top spectacle that we've been seeing in horror lately.
Like a return to simplicity. It's like, let's strip away all the CGI. Let's get back to what made Final Destination terrifying in the first place. And speaking of terrifying, can we talk about the nose ring death?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you have this tattoo artist.
Yeah.
He's getting a dad tattoo.
Right.
Right. And all of a sudden, this chain reaction is triggered by a ceiling fan.
Yeah.
And ends up with his septum ring getting caught. And he's left dangling above a fire. I mean, come on.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. No, it's definitely a memorable image. You know, from a technical standpoint, the way they build tension, starting with something seemingly innocuous, like a ceiling fan, right?
Yeah.
And then they just escalate the danger, step by step.
Right.
Classic Final Destination.
You're totally right. They really make you wait for it. They draw out the suspense until that moment of impact. And it's not just the gore. It's the way they make you question every everyday object.
They take something so mundane, like a ceiling fan, and they turn it into like this harbinger of doom. It's like makes you see the world differently, you know? Wondering like what seemingly harmless object is going to be my undoing.
I'll never look at a ceiling fan the same way again.
Right?
It's like the pool scene in the first movie or the tanning bed scene in the second one. Those deaths, they're iconic. They're iconic for a reason.
Absolutely. Those scenes just perfectly capture that blend of horror and dark humor
Yeah.
that the franchise is known for, you know?
They're terrifying.
Yes.
Yes. But there's also that element of absurdity, makes them almost comical.
Right. It's like you're horrified, but you can't help but admire the creativity of it all. Like, how did they even come up with that? Okay, speaking of familiar faces, guess who's back?
Who?
Tony Todd.
No way.
The enigmatic William Bloodworth.
Now that is a surprise, especially considering Tony Todd sadly passed away in November of 2024.
Yeah.
This must be one of his last film appearances.
Yeah. It's bittersweet to see him back.
Yeah.
I have to wonder what brought him back for this role. Was it a sense of closure? A final farewell to a character that he helped create?
It definitely adds a really poignant layer to the film. You know, for the fans, seeing him reprise this role adds this element of depth, nostalgia. It's almost like a tribute to his legacy. Totally. Okay, so moving on to the plot of the movie. We know that Bloodline centers on this college student. She's having premonitions of a series of deaths, including those of her family members, and she's determined to break the cycle.
Interesting. That breaking the cycle element, it's really intriguing. Is she trying to, like, outsmart death itself? Or is there something more to it? Is she trying to understand the rules of the game, figure out how to permanently escape death's grasp? I don't know.
It's a great question. And it makes me wonder, could this connect to any of the previous films? Could we see characters or storylines from earlier installments resurface?
It's possible. I mean, the franchise has a history of weaving together seemingly standalone stories into a larger interconnected narrative. I mean, that's one of the things that keeps fans coming back for more.
Right. It keeps us guessing. And one of the articles that we read even mentioned some fans theorizing that this could actually be a prequel, delving into the origins of Death's plan.
Wow. Now, that's a fascinating possibility. I mean, we've seen glimpses of the mythology behind Death's motives, right? But a deeper exploration of its origins, that could be groundbreaking. It would add a whole new dimension to the franchise.
I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Imagine getting to peek behind the curtain, seeing how death chooses its victims, and maybe, just maybe, finding a way to disrupt its plan.
It would certainly raise the stakes, but even if it's not a prequel, this whole idea of breaking the cycle, it suggests a level of agency that we haven't really seen before. It implies that maybe, just maybe, there's a way to defy fate.
Okay, so we've got this back-to-basics approach. We've got a familiar face, and we have a plot that hints at something much bigger. What else is there?
Well, there has been some debate online about the realism of the nose ring death.
Oh, really?
Yeah, some critics argue that it's a little far-fetched, even for Final Destination.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many septum piercings are getting snagged on ceiling fans in real life, but, I mean, that's part of the fun of Final Destination.
Right, it's not about realism.
It's about spectacle.
Right, it's about taking those everyday anxieties and amplifying them to the point of absurdity. It's a way for us to confront our fears in a safe, fictional setting, knowing that we can always close our eyes or turn off the screen if it gets too intense.
Exactly. It's like a roller coaster, you know? You're in a controlled environment, but your heart still races when you're plummeting down that first drop.
Right. The key is to just embrace the ride, suspend your disbelief, allow yourself to be swept away by the sheer creativity and audacity of the filmmakers.
And let's be honest, even if that nose ring death isn't exactly plausible, it's still going to make people think twice about getting their septum pierced.
Well, that's the power of a well-crafted horror scene, right? It stays with you, it seeps into your subconscious, and it colors your perception of the world, even if just for a moment.
It's like they say, sometimes the most effective horror is the kind that lingers long after the movie's over. The kind that makes you look twice at the seemingly ordinary.
And in the world of Final Destination, the ordinary can be deadly. Indeed. It's interesting to think about how this franchise has evolved. Since the first film came out, the first one was a surprise hit. It really tapped into something at the time.
Yeah, it felt fresh, original. It came out when teen horror was huge. But Final Destination had this totally unique premise that set it apart.
Totally. It wasn't just masked killers or, supernatural forces. It was about death. Death itself, the inevitability of it, and how even seemingly random accidents could be part of a larger, more sinister plan.
Yeah. It really made you question everything. What if that bus that I just missed was actually part of Death's design?
Right, exactly. And that's what I think makes it so compelling, even all these years later. It plays on those deepest fears, those anxieties that we all have, about the fragility of life, the things that we can't control.
And it doesn't hurt that the death scenes are so inventive, so memorable. I mean, they've become like urban legends, almost. These cautionary tales that make you think twice about stepping on a loose nail or, standing too close to a construction site.
Yeah, I mean, those scenes are definitely part of the franchise's DNA. I think beyond just the spectacle. There's a deeper layer at play here. These films, they force us to confront our own mortality, to acknowledge that death is a part of life, even if we try to ignore it.
Right. It's not just about the blood and guts. There's this philosophical element to Final Destination that really sets it apart from other slasher flicks.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like, what does it even mean to cheat death? Can we truly escape our fate, or are we just delaying the inevitable?
Right. And what are the consequences of trying to outsmart death? We've seen in these movies that it rarely ends well for those who try to mess with the grand design.
Absolutely. There's this sense that there are forces at play that are beyond our comprehension, and that trying to manipulate those forces, it can have disastrous consequences.
Which brings us back to Bloodlines, this whole breaking the cycle concept. What is this time? It's not just about surviving death's plan, but about understanding it. Maybe even finding a way to rewrite the rules.
That's a bold idea. And it's one that could potentially reshape the entire franchise. If there is a way to break the cycle, to truly defy fate, then what does that mean for the characters, for the rules of the universe they inhabit?
Right. And it makes me wonder, is this the direction the franchise is heading in? Are they moving away from the traditional death comes for you formula and exploring something more complex, more philosophical?
Yeah, it's hard to say for sure, but the clues are definitely there. I mean, the return to those roots. The focus on a protagonist who's actively trying to understand and potentially control Death's plan. I mean, those are all hints that something different is brewing.
And let's not forget about the return of Tony Todd, his character, William Bloodworth. He's always been shrouded in mystery. He seems to understand the rules of the game, but his motives are never really clear. Could he hold the key to breaking the cycle?
Possibly. He's often served as this kind of guide, this harbinger of things to come. Perhaps in Bloodlines, he'll take on a more active role, revealing secrets about Death's plan, offering guidance to those who seek to defy it.
I mean, imagine getting a crash course in death avoidance from the Grim Reaper himself.
Yeah.
That would be pretty epic.
It would be. It would add a whole new layer of intrigue to the story. It would be fascinating to see how the characters react to his knowledge. You know, do they embrace it or do they reject it?
And how would death itself respond to someone trying to disrupt its carefully crafted plans? Would it escalate things, make the death traps even more elaborate, more terrifying?
Ooh, that's a question that keeps me up at night. Because if there's one thing we've learned from Final Destination, it's that death does not like to be cheated.
Nope. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the evolution of the franchise, the philosophical themes, the potential implications of breaking the cycle.
Yeah.
But let's not forget about the fans. What do you think they're expecting from Bloodlines?
Well, I think fans are hoping for that balance of nostalgia and innovation. You know, they want to see those classic elements that made the franchise so popular. The creative death scenes, the suspenseful buildups, that sense of impending doom.
Yeah. But they also want something new, something that pushes the boundaries, something that makes them think. I mean, they've been waiting 14 years for this, so the stakes are high.
They are. And I think the filmmakers are aware of that. You know, they're not just trying to cash in on a popular franchise. They're trying to honor its legacy while also taking it in new and exciting directions.
It's like they're walking this tightrope. They need to satisfy the old fans while also attracting a new generation of viewers who might not even be familiar with the franchise.
Yeah, it's a challenging task, but I think they're up to it. I mean, the trailer has generated a lot of buzz, and the early reactions, they've been positive.
Yeah, people are excited.
Imagine.
I've seen a lot of fan theories online. People are dissecting every frame of that trailer, trying to figure out how it connects to the previous films, speculating about the characters and the deaths.
That's part of the fun of it all, right? The way these films, they spark conversations and debates, the way they stay with you long after the credits roll.
Yeah. Final Destination. It's always been a franchise that rewards repeat viewings, you know?
Yeah.
You catch new details each time, you make new connections, you find new layers of meaning.
And that's what I'm hoping for with Bloodlines. A film that not only entertains, but also provokes thought. That makes us question our assumptions about life, death, and everything in between.
That's a tall order. But I have faith in the filmmakers. They've proven time and again that they understand what makes Final Destination tick.
They know how to tap into those deepest fears, how to craft death scenes that are both horrifying and strangely beautiful, and how to leave us wanting more.
And speaking of wanting more, I'm curious to see how they handle the ending of Bloodlines. Will it be a definitive conclusion? Or will it leave the door open for future installments?
That's the million-dollar question. The franchise has a history of cliffhangers, ambiguous endings, leaving the audience wondering what's next.
Which I love. It keeps the conversation going. It keeps us theorizing, speculating, long after the lights come up in the theater.
Right, and it creates that sense of anticipation for what's to come. Will we get another sequel, a prequel, a reboot? The possibilities are endless.
Okay. So we have a lot to look forward to with Final Destination, Bloodlines.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, let's just take a moment to appreciate the impact this franchise has had on popular culture. I mean, it's become a phenomenon.
It really has.
Right. It's spawned memes, parodies, even its own subgenre of horror.
It's true. It's like Final Destination has seeped into our collective consciousness. I mean, we see those Rube Goldberg death traps everywhere. Movies, TV shows, even commercials.
Right. And the catchphrase, "It's coming for you," it's become synonymous with unexpected danger, with that feeling that something bad is about to happen.
It's like this cultural shorthand for the inevitability of fate, for this idea that no matter how hard we try, we can't escape the things that are meant to be.
But yet, despite that fatalistic undercurrent, there's also this sense of humor, this playful wink at the absurdity of it all.
Right. It's like the franchise is saying, yeah, life is unpredictable, and death is always lurking around the corner. But hey, at least we can laugh about it.
It's this darkly humorous approach to a very serious subject.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what makes Final Destination so enduring. You know, it's a reminder that even in the face of death, we can still find moments of joy, laughter, even beauty.
Well said. And that sometimes the most unexpected twists and turns in life can lead to the most surprising and rewarding destinations.
Okay. Wow. That got a little deep there for a second.
Yeah.
But I think it's a fitting sentiment for a franchise that's all about exploring the mysteries of life and death.
It is, and I think it's a message that resonates with audiences, especially in today's world where uncertainty and unpredictability, they just seem to be the norm. Final Destination. It offers a way to confront those anxieties, to process them through the lens of horror and dark humor.
And maybe, just maybe, by facing our fears head on, we can learn to appreciate the preciousness of life and make the most of every moment. It's amazing how Final Destination has stayed relevant for so long. It's not just the deaths, it's like the whole concept. The way it just messes with our expectations of what a horror movie can even be.
It really is. I think it's a testament to the power of a simple yet effective premise. You can't escape your fate. Death is always out there lurking, waiting for that perfect moment to strike. It's a universal fear in Final Destination. They exploit it in such a way that is both terrifying and entertaining.
And they managed to keep things fresh, too, over the years, finding new and inventive ways to kill off their characters. I mean, who could forget the log truck scene from the first film, or the tanning bed from the second?
Ugh. Those scenes are burned into our collective memory for sure. And they're not just gruesome, they're clever, they're suspenseful, visually stunning. It's a testament to the creativity and the ingenuity of the filmmakers.
Yeah. And they've inspired so many imitators. You see those Rube Goldberg-esque death traps everywhere now, not just in horror movies, but in comedies, action films, even cartoons.
Totally. It's become a trope, a shorthand for unexpected danger. It really speaks to the influence of Final Destination, that this particular brand of horror has become so pervasive in pop culture.
It's like they tapped into something primal, something that resonates with us on this deep subconscious level.
Yeah.
We all have those moments where we feel like something bad is about to happen, like we're just barely avoiding disaster. Final Destination takes that feeling and just amplifies it. Shows us just how fragile life can be.
Yeah, and they do it with a sense of dark humor that makes it all the more palatable. It's not just about gore and shock value. It's about finding the absurdity in the midst of tragedy, the irony in the face of death.
Yeah, it's scary, but you can't help but laugh at some of these ridiculous ways that these characters meet their demise. It's this delicate balance to strike. But Final Destination somehow manages to pull it off.
And that's why it's lasted. It's more than just a horror franchise. It's a cultural phenomenon. Reflects our anxieties about the world, our fears of the unknown, our fascination with the macabre.
So as we wait for Final Destination, Bloodlines, to hit theaters, I think it's worth asking, what is it about this franchise that keeps us coming back for more? Is it the deaths, the suspense, the humor? Or is it something deeper, something that speaks to like a shared human experience?
I think it's a combination of all of those things. Final Destination offers this really unique blend of horror, suspense, dark comedy that appeals to such a broad audience. But beyond the entertainment, I think it offers a way for us to process our own fears, our anxieties about death, and the fragility of life.
It's a safe space to explore those dark thoughts, confront our mortality in this fictional setting, knowing that we can always turn off the movie if it gets too intense.
And maybe, just maybe, by facing our fears head on, we can learn to appreciate the preciousness of life and really make the most of every moment.
Okay, wow. That got really deep there for a second. But I think you're right. There's something cathartic about watching these characters cheat death, only to be taken out by a rogue tanning bed or runaway log truck. It reminds us that life is unpredictable and that we should never take it for granted.
Exactly. Final Destination is a cautionary tale, but it's also a celebration of life. A reminder to live each day to the fullest, because you never know when your number might be up.
So, as we eagerly await the release of Final Destination, Bloodlines, let's all raise a glass to the franchise that made us fear ceiling fans, swimming pools, and tanning beds, and let's all remember to appreciate those little things in life, because you never know when death might be lurking right around the corner.
Cheers to that. And to our listeners, we leave you with this thought. What seemingly harmless object in your everyday life could become your undoing in a Final Destination film? Think about it. And maybe, just maybe, be a little more careful out there.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We see you next time.